Science Beetle.
Welcome, students. Today what I want to talk to you about is beginning the discussion about what is science. And science really is just going to be a mechanism that helps us understand the world. And so let me just write that here. Science is going to be a mechanism that helps us understand the world. Okay? And science can be many things. So this mechanism essentially is some kind of tool. It's a process. Okay? It's a pattern as well. Or another way of looking at this is that it is a method. And so in science then we use tools, processes, patterns, and methods in order for us to help, in order for us to understand the world better. And the general way that we do this is through the use of what we call the scientific method. And this method is really the mechanism that we're talking about. And the scientific method has several parts. The very first part essentially is when you start thinking about some question or some problem that you're trying to understand. Then you develop a hypothesis. This hypothesis is generally a question, I guess it's a possible solution to the problem or a possible answer to the question. Okay, and so we're just going to put here possible answer, possible solution. To what? To these things here. Okay. The third step is that you actually have to have some kind of experiment. So once you've got this possible solution or this possible answer, you have to test it in terms of an experiment. So the third step is going to be the experiment phase. And this is essentially where you test your hypothesis. Then the fourth step here is going to be where you actually, once you conduct the experiment, you're going to generate a lot of data. This is going to be your observations that either help prove or disprove your initial question, or to help prove or disprove your initial hypothesis, rather. And the observations here, the data, one of the sub-steps of data is that you have to analyze the data. Once you analyze it, at that point you're going to be able to tell, yes, my hypothesis was correct, or my hypothesis was not correct. And then the fifth step, I'm going to write it over here. The fifth step is where you actually draw your conclusion. And the conclusion is always used, is supported by the data. And so any conclusion that you reach has to be supported by the data. In other words, the data must show that this conclusion has logically been reached, because in your experiment, you're going to come up with A is going to lead you to B, it's going to lead you to C, and eventually it's going to lead you to the conclusion. Okay, and so those are the general steps of the scientific method. But when we do this, though, there's one thing that you also have to keep in mind, that science does have a limit in terms of what it can help us with. So let me just erase some of this information here and explore this concept. So even though science, even though science is a mechanism that helps us understand the world, the other thing that we need to remember is that science has limits. For example, science is very good at helping us understand things that we can observe. Okay, or essentially this is going to be things that we can see. It's also very good with things that we can test. So things are testable. It's also going to be very good with things that we can, predict. And again, here with the predicting, it's because we're able to see at some point, we're able to observe it and know that there is a certain frequency. But ultimately, with science is very good at helping us understand things that we can observe, and more importantly, things that we can prove. And so it can be proven. The limitations of where science lies, and science can help us, are going to be things that are very objective and subjective. Things like religion or spirituality. Other areas that are very subjective are going to be things like morality, or whether things are prettier than others. It's very hard for us to prove these because they vary from person to person, and that's kind of what we mean by subjective. It could be very different for one person, and that same thing can be extremely different for someone else. And so when we talk about religion and spirituality, one of the main things that comes up here is going to be the concept of faith. And it's just that we can't measure this. It can't be measured. And so one of the things over here on the things that science can do that I did not put before is that other things is it's measurable. Over here, we can't measure faith. We can see the manifestation of faith in terms of people doing things, and some people may be able to do more things than others, but you really can't put it into a box. You can't measure it with a ruler. You can't quantify it in any way, kind of like a volume of some sort. It's just something that is. Same thing goes with morality. Just because, and morality, just so that we're clear, deals with whatever is positive or negative, or whatever is right or wrong. Okay? Right or wrong. And because morality is very similar to this concept of religion and spirituality, that you can't measure it, just like you can't measure whether one person version of right is going to be true for another person. I mean, you can ask people, but the sense of what is right varies from person to person, and because of that, there's no way that we can actually determine that every person is going to have this particular set of morality standards as opposed to someone else. And then what you get oftentimes with the concept of morality is whether someone, not only is it right or wrong, but oftentimes you tend to see the actions as a result of that morality. And the same thing goes with concepts like prettier. It's very hard for us to determine who is actually prettier, because prettier, just like morality, differs from one person to the next. One person may think that having brown hair or dark eyes is going to be very pretty, but another person might think that blonde hair, blue eyes is pretty. So you're never going to have a solid agreement as to what concept of pretty really is. And because of that, these things over here on this side are the things that cannot be measured. And for that matter, they cannot be quantified. And so this is going to be the limit of what science can do. And so on this side is going to be the area of what science can. So in other words, what science can help with. And on the other side is what science cannot. And so this is going to be the very first lesson in terms of what we're trying to do here with this course, or with this topic. Go ahead and subscribe us, and next time we'll explore a little bit more about the aspects of science. All right, talk to you soon.